Alright, in this video I'll be building a utility room near my electrical panel and where the city water comes into the house. You can see that I've already done the drywall on the exterior walls, so I'll skip that step, but there's still lots of work to do. You can see the floor needs to come up, or at least some of it I'm going to remove. There's still a lot of work to do with some wire management, and then I do need to raise this into the floor joists so that I could actually run the wall through there without having to make a big notch for that section of HVAC conduit to run through. So I'll put it up into the joists and then run it across. And again, quite a bit of electrical work to just tidy up and make a little more presentable. I'm also going to put a switch for that light, and I'm going to move the light in a little bit because there's going to be a door there. I don't want to hit the light with the door. So first thing I'm going to do is remove 2 rows of the tiles, and first tool I'm going to try out here is actually for scraping ice. It does a pretty good job. It definitely makes a big mess out of it though. If it were slightly sharper, it might do a cleaner job. But just because I find it kicks so many little pieces out, I'm going to switch tools to an oscillating tool. And just one point, if you got an old house, you might want to consider that your tiles could have asbestos in them, so definitely be careful with that. These tiles were probably put down in the 90s. It is Canada, so it should be okay. So this is the oscillating tool I'm going to use. It's a Bosch tool with a scraper blade. I wouldn't necessarily say it's faster. It's definitely a lot less jarring on the wrists, and you just sort of sit there and pluck away at it. It is loud, especially with the scraper kind of hitting the concrete, so hearing protection is a good idea. It is a little bit time consuming because the glue on the back of the tiles is quite well adhered to the floor in certain spots, and in other spots it just sort of pops right off. So that's about 2.5 rows of tiles removed. You can see there's still quite a bit of glue on the floor, so I'll get some degreaser, and I got some adhesive remover. I'll put that on the floor and get all that glue off as well. Now at each of the joints in the HVAC ducting there is a screw, so I'm just going to remove those, and then I'm going to remove the ductwork from where it's sitting there. It kind of does a goofy little drop down and angle in, so I'm just going to make it go straighter than it is. So with the screws out, it just sort of pulls apart, no problem. And I picked up a longer straight run, a couple of connectors, and a couple extra elbows. So you can see I put a board in there to help hold everything up. Added the slightly longer straight piece, might be 1 foot longer than the piece that was already there. And then I added 1 articulating elbow and screwed it into the floor joist. And that'll make it so this ductwork is all within the utility room. And then once it's all put back together, I'm just going to use the metal duct tape to seal up all the cracks after I got screws in all of the joints. I think the technical term for the tape is aluminum foil tape. There's the ductwork all in, and I didn't notice the difference in the cold air coming out of the register. So you can see I've got a mix of treated wood, which are going to be used for the bottom plates, and just regular 2x4s, Econo studs. They're going to be used for the rest of the wall. You can also see that I've sort of measured out where everything's going to go on the floor. And I've also made an allowance for a 32-inch door. So I'm going to be leaving space for a 34-inch rough opening. And I'm going to cut the bottom plates with the circular saw. The other thing to note, as I cut these boards, I also seal the end with wood preservative. So there's the bottom plates. And I'm going to run a double top plate, so I've already cut the top plates as well. So bottom plates on the bottom, the treated boards, and then I've got double top plates on top of each one. And now I'm just going to take the tape measure and measure out the height that I need to cut all of the studs. Once I've got all the studs cut, I'm going to mark the 16-inch point so I can do 16 on center for all the studs for the wall. And using a combination square, I'm just going to mark the 16 on center point so it goes across both the top and bottom plates. And this will allow me to line up the studs a little bit easier. So to fasten the studs to the top bottom plates, I used a combination of screws and nails. And I'm going to put in the second stud for the door frame. So I'll be putting the jack stud and attaching it onto the king stud in this case. Because the wall's a little short, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to actually fit a header in there, and the door may actually be screwed right into the double top plate, but we'll see. I'm actually not going to do the doors in this video. I'll do a separate video on installing an interior door at a later date. And as mentioned with the treated boards, anything that touches the cement, I'll just use some of this cut and seal wood preservative just to prevent any potential wood rot in the future, or at least prevent it as much as possible. So with the first wall assembled, I'll lift it into place, and I'm going to line it up with the floor joist that I've used as my guide to where I want the wall to line up, and then obviously I'll line it up to the floor where I also made marks on where it would be directly underneath the floor joist. And I'll use a hammer and just knock the bottom plate into place, and then I'll just also come around and tap the top plate into place, make sure everything's nice and vertical. And you can see it lines up well with that floor joist, and then obviously things go in a different direction, but that's fine. And it'll terminate on that floor joist. And at various points across the wall, I'll just take the level and make sure everything is good and vertical, and everything looks pretty decent. Now to fasten the bottom plate to the concrete floor, I'm just using a ram set, and I'm going to just nail one nail in between each of the studs. So there'll be 6 nails in total put into the bottom plate on this section of wall. And obviously wear eye and ear protection if you're using a ram set. And I'll get one last one on the other side of the door just to make sure that that's held in place as well. And I usually find you do need to hit them a few times with a sledgehammer just to get them fully seated. Now to get through the double top plate, I did get 4-inch screws, and these are structural screws, so they are a little bit stronger than your regular screw, particularly for shear strength. And these ones take a Torx bit. They are more expensive, so I don't use these quite as much as just a regular construction screw. But in some framing applications, I find that these structural screws are obviously the way to go, as they are much stronger and hold things together a little bit better. One thing I didn't videotape is just doing some of the fire blocking, and then I made a whole bunch of additional blocks. And the additional blocks on the other side of the door are just there to give me something to screw the drywall into. And I will be putting a switch box right beside the door. Now for the other wall, I am going to notch this out for existing electrical. So I'm going to set the depth of the circular saw to about half the depth of the board. I've already sort of marked out where the electrical wires are going to pass through the top plate, and I'm just going to do a whole bunch of cuts with the circular saw. Once that's done, I'll come with the hammer and smash up where I made the cuts with the circular saw, and then there's another electrical wire on the other side. I'll do the exact same thing. So I'll define the perimeter I'm cutting, and then I'll do a whole bunch of cuts in between the two cut marks. Again, smash the area with a hammer and get all those cut pieces out, and it'll be a pretty fast and easy way to notch those out so I can get the electrical to pass through when I raise the wall. And just like the last one, I'm going to do 16 on centers, and then I'll take my combination square and scribe it across both the top and bottom plates of the wall. One thing to note, if you're going to do screws or nails into treated wood, you need to make sure that you have screws and nails that are approved for treated lumber. So I'll show a little bit more of this wall actually getting put together. I usually jam in 1 screw per board just to make sure everything's held tightly, and then take 2 nails and put them into the board as well. I do like using the construction screws because they keep everything really tight, but obviously they lack a lot of the shear strength that the nails have. So I do have a tendency to add a couple of nails in there as well, just to make sure that it is both tight and has good shear strength. Obviously, I don't own a framing nail gun. With the studs fixed to both the top and bottom plate, I'll raise the wall up, and in this case, I'll hit the bottom with a sledgehammer just to bring it into place and make sure it's lined up with the other wall that I put in. Obviously there's some visual cue that it's lined up, and you can see where that one electrical wire passes through, and you can see where the other electrical wire passes through. And of course, take the level and make sure that each of the boards look good, and if there's any adjustments, adjust accordingly. In this case, it's also quite level. So I'll do the same thing. I'll use the ram set to secure it to the bottom, and then I'll use some structural screws to secure it to the top. And also, before I put the drywall in, I did run the 14-3 Romex. And I think in most locations the 3 wire is required in this type of application so that the white wire stays neutral. Okay, I don't want to film putting up drywall, so I sort of skipped that and did it on my own. And I'm going to use these Legrand switches for the light switch. Like I said, it's a 3 wire. So I'm going to cap the white wire in the switch box and then obviously attach the ground to the box as per normal. I do have another video on switch leg loops, but for this one I'm putting the black and red wire onto the 2-way switch, and then obviously I will connect the ground to the switch as well. And once all that's on, of course, I'll screw the switch into the switch box. So I'm going to change it from a drawstring to just a regular light. And in the larger junction box, there's 1 wire coming in that goes to the fuse panel. There's 2 more wires that go out to other lights, and then there's 1 going to the switch. So in this case, all of the whites are tied together with 1 pigtail that's going to go to my light. All the blacks are tied together with no pigtails, and then I'm going to attach the red one that goes to the switch to the light fixture. So the white wire that is on the pigtail and the red wire are going to now attach to that light fixture. And that'll allow the white wire to stay neutral at all times so that it doesn't have to become a hot wire. And before I start painting, you can see that I've wrapped the water line with some plastic so I don't get paint all over it. I am going to do primer first, and I'm going to use a Seco product, which is just a new drywall primer. Since there's no ceiling and I'm not going to put one in, this is very simple. All the walls are the same color. I'll use the paintbrush to cut the wall. And then I'm just using a regular roller, nothing special to roll the primer on. I'm sure there's some people out there that would just buy an all-in-one paint and primer. In my experience, the primer is significantly cheaper, so it does make sense to put your first coat down on primer because you're just going to get a better coat, and it's going to cost you less in the long run. So that's what it looks like with the first coat of primer on. And I do come around and do another one. So for the actual paint, I'm using this Benjamin Moore paint, which is a Ultra Spec Scuff X. It's more of an extreme duty paint, so it'll take a bit more of a beating than just a regular paint. And the color that I'm using is called Revere Pewter. I'm using this just because I have a lot of it still from other jobs, so I'm gonna use it up down here in the basement. And for the paint, just like the primer, I'm just using a regular brush to do the cut in around the edges as well as on the top in certain locations so that I don't get it all over the electrical wires or that I don't paint all over the electrical panel. So in certain spots I'm using the brush, but because there's no ceiling, it's not that big of a deal. And once the corners are cut in, I'll just use the roller and finish up with the roller. And for this, just like the primer, I'm going to do 2 coats of paint on the wall. Out of all the paints that I've used, I do find that Benjamin Moore products are my preferred go-to for painting. I find that they roll on smoother, look better, last longer, and is just an overall more enjoyable product to work with than a lot of the other paints that I've used. With that said, they are more expensive, so I definitely recommend trying to tie your projects around some of their Benjamin Moore paint sales, such as the buy one get one 50% off sale they usually run. Now with 1 coat of paint on the wall, I'm going to clean the floor with this Valspar floor prep. The Valspar product is a floor degreaser, which will obviously help paint that I'm going to put on the floor adhere better to the floor. The instructions on the Valspar floor degreaser indicate that you're supposed to wet the floor first, then add the floor cleaner, and then take a brush of some sort and give it a good scrub down. And it also tells you to scrub it in multiple directions. If I was doing a larger area floor, I would definitely want one that has a push handle so that I don't have to get right down close and personal with the floor and give it a good scrub. But just because this floor is less than 10 feet by 10 feet, it's not a big deal. Just use this small hand brush. So there it is with the floor degreaser laid down. And now I'm just going to mop everything up and let it dry out. And that's just water in there. So the paint I'm going to use on the floor is this Valspar porch and floor paint, which is for obviously porches and concrete floors. And the color that I'm using is just a flat, plain gray. So just like the wall with the primer and the paint, I'm going to use the brush and cut in around the edges of the wall. And that's just so I don't get the floor paint on the wall. I'm using a different type of roller in this application. I'm going to be using a bit of a thicker roller. Because there's so many imperfections in the floor, it is recommended that you use a roller that is designed for semi-smooth or rough surfaces for your concrete floor, unless you got a really smooth concrete floor. So that's what it looks like after one coat. You can see there's differences in color. A couple of like the large indentations didn't get paint. So I do paint the floor one more time, and I also paint the walls one more time. Now, because this is a tool storage room, I did pick up this shelf from Canadian Tire, and it is a 4 foot wide, 2 foot deep, and 72 inches tall shelving unit, and it comes with 5 shelves. So now I have a place to put my tools. And just coming around, I did a few extra things off camera, such as take some insulation and put it between the HVAC and some of the electrical wires that run close. I've come up and pinned some of the electrical wires to the wall. And I took a new clean sheet of plastic and put it behind that plumbing, just because the plumbing is really close to the wall and I don't want water to sweat and damage the drywall. Anyway, I need to get my tools up off the floor so I can start working on the rest of the basement. Thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.